Hey everyone, Mystical Mark here. So this will be your weekly astrology forecast for the week of May 18th to the 24th of 2025. Now, of course, before I get into the charts for this week, if you are looking for any kind of reading with me, any of my services at all those links are in the description below, whether they're live one-on-one readings or readings that I record and then send to you. Everything's in the description below. Have a look if you are interested. If you are on TikTok, just go to my bio and go to my link tree. Absolutely everything is listed there. That's the easiest way for you. You can do that on YouTube too, but of course, there's more room in the description for all those things. So, yes. All right. And of course, before we head into the charts, as I say in the beginning of all my videos, my guidance has been, and likely always will be, astrology is an energetic template conducive to certain things. Meaning that energetic template is there, those energy cycles are there, however, we still have free will that exists within that. Things are likely to manifest and happen based on the energetic themes, the energetic cycles that exist. However, we still have free will within that, so what I get guided through intuitively, if I'm talking specifically about a subject or something, you have to remember that is always subject to change, all right? It's when I'm recording this video from this vantage point forward that there may be slight changes, or maybe if nothing changes, going forward like that, things are likely to turn out as they are. However, if big decisions are made or something happens or whatever, it can always change. All right? So please be mindful of that. And that's for any intuitive prediction, any card readings, anything like that, whether it comes from me or from anybody else. It's always subject to change because we have free will. All right, with that all being said, let me get into the chart for this week here. Let me just switch my screen here. There we go. All right, so we're going to start here on a Sunday, May 18th of 2025. Okay, so we got some, well, I was going to say some minor aspects, but we do have, well, we might as well start with it. We do have Jupiter here in sextile to Chiron. Now, as I've mentioned before here, with this Jupiter in Gemini, still in Gemini, it is moving into Cancer soonish this year. But with Jupiter in Gemini, it's this expansion of awareness, expansion of communication, expansion of that kind of stuff. With Chiron in Aries, this is kind of what I'm actually hearing is healing, okay? And because we want to look at this from a higher perspective, as well as we don't want to be triggered and put ourselves into an aspect of victimhood as well. This does relate to our wounds and where we've been hurt, etc., and maybe awareness of that. But what I heard there was healing. We're healing a lot of that through this expansion of awareness, through communication, through talking about things, through all of this kind of stuff. And Chiron is in Aries. So this is healing through, so pay attention to that, healing through the aspects of self, identity, sovereignty, freedom, etc. So when I was burping there, I was thinking about freedom and sovereignty and individuality, okay? So, and for those of you that maybe don't watch me when I burp there, that's usually the guide saying, yes, pay attention to that. So through this expansion of awareness, communication, could be what I'm hearing was kind of like crazy chaos stuff, because that can be Gemini. It happens, quick. Gemini can be a bit crazy. Okay, but through that kind of stuff, we're healing this, right? Sometimes in order to, when things come up, especially we're dealing with two masculine signs here. We're dealing with a cardinal sign and a mutable sign. A mutable sign, changeable, regarding aspects of change, how we can work to change something. Aries, cardinal, moving forward in a new direction, okay? And this is masculine energy. What is masculine energy? The action taking, the doing energy. So when we're dealing with this stuff, it's about taking action to do something, taking action to communicate, to talk, to not just come into our awareness, but to maybe bring into awareness regarding how we can heal these wounds to ourselves, our identity, our sovereignty, etc. It's not just sitting back and just whatever. This is actually having the conversation to actually move things forward in this regard. All right? And that with this sextile here, there's a positive opportunity for this to come through, for this to happen. Okay, also on this day, since we're talking about Gemini, we've got Mercury here in semi-square to Saturn at 29 degrees of Pisces. Now, at the 29 degrees of any sign, this is one of the critical degrees in astrology, is that anaretic degree. And it can feel like you need to get something done and that needs to happen right fucking now because this planet's about to move. Okay, that's kind of the vibe of that energy. However, with Saturn, what I'm getting with this is that vibe of Saturn of like restriction, control, but also that aspect of boundaries. You have to remember Saturn, especially in a birth chart, Saturn is where our growth lies, where we need to grow, expand, mature. Saturn teaches through restriction. So through that restriction, Saturn will restrict. And through that, that is where we need to learn to set appropriate boundaries. Saturn again, say no, Saturn again, and through that, grow and expand. Okay, so with this, again, Mercury's in Taurus, what I'm getting with this, value, worth, money issue stuff, etc. And with Saturn in Pisces, there could be this restriction of compassion, restriction of all that kind of stuff. Remember, Saturn in Pisces, I consider the dissolution of that malefic energy. However, in relation to this, is that where we need to expand in terms of the restriction of that compassion, etc., to dissolve those restrictions, that negative stuff that is occurring there, right? So what this communication is, this could be harsh stuff, especially when we deal with Saturn, regarding those restrictions, all that kind of stuff, and learning to set appropriate boundaries regarding our own value, worth, money, etc. to say, no, I'm not going to fuck with your bullshit anymore. I have compassion for myself. I have love for myself and understanding for myself. And what I'm kind of being drawn to is this Pisces energy of like anything goes. Right, Pisces is very expansive, anything goes for whoever you are, and understanding that value and worth and growing in that sense and setting those appropriate boundaries in there, and how that relates to this Jupiter in Gemini, which is Mercury's sign in sextile to Chiron, healing those wounds through setting those boundaries, through that expansion awareness, etc., that communication that needs to occur there in order to heal our independence, our sovereignty, etc. Okay, and again, this Taurus Pisces, that's more of a feminine vibe. So we're kind of getting that intuitive awareness maybe of looking at that square being like, this is what we have to do, but it works with this masculine energy of this Jupiter in Gemini, Mercury sign, and taking action to talk about this, to expand this awareness and do something about it in order to heal those wounds regarding that lack of compassion through the setting of those appropriate boundaries now and understanding our own value and worth, etc. These energies working together. Now, as I've said before, we all have both divine masculine and divine feminine energy within all of us, regardless of your sexual orientation, your sexuality, gender expression, etc. That, of course, is all still valid. However, all of us have divine masculine and divine feminine energies within us, and when they're working together in harmony, that's when things work. And then kind of maybe being brought to this as an example of how those energies can work together in harmony. Okay, so they're not just against each other. They're not just whatever, different, one better than the other. No, that is not it at all. Just because something is different does not mean it is better or less than anything else. The two energies are different, yes, but that's just it. They're just different. They're still both equal. They're still both valid. Okay, in their unique expression, right? And we need to learn to understand that and get rid of the negative bullshit programming that has been forced upon us within our world surrounding that. All right, so that's kind of the vibe with that. We also have here Venus in quintile to Jupiter. Okay, so Venus in Aries, and what I talked about with Venus in Aries is this idea of our independent self versus the other's relationship. That's Venus, that's more of a Libra kind of a vibe. Of course, Venus also rules Taurus, where Mercury is, which can deal with our material things, but what I'm more so getting with this is like that aspect of value and worth. But of course, that can relate to material things as well. It's that aspect of Venus, but it's relating to our value and worth in that sense, and our value and worth within our relationships, as well as our own individual aspect of sovereignty as that relates with the Venus in Aries there. All right, so this is honoring that with not only ourselves, but honoring that with the other as well. And I've talked about this before. You can watch my previous videos on the Venus retrograde, etc., which go over that concept. All right. And with this quintile to Jupiter, this is a bit more of that feminine energy. This could be behind the scenes energy. This could be expansion of those behind the scene, or I was going to say behind the scenes conversations, but behind the scenes conversations that are maybe expanding or becoming more abundant in that sense in order to bring about that healing and everything that I've talked about with those other aspects that are occurring on this day here. All right. So again, this is something that could feel fated, but again, you create your fate, whether it was you wanted things to become manifest before you even incarnated here, or whether you're manifesting it or it's coming about throughout this lifetime, we create that. We are extremely powerful beings. We are extremely powerful creators. Okay, don't let the world fucking beat you down and think that you're not, because you are. All right, you have that power within you. Always listen to your own heart. Okay, I ain't here to fucking tell you what to do with your life. Do the internal work to go inside and have a look at this. Okay, so that's that. So kind of maybe a more introspective focus, but also with that taking action to have conversations, etc., and having a look at this. This energy is peaking on this day, but again, we're leading into this, of course, prior, but the end of the previous week, and it's still going to wane off as we kind of go into the rest of the week, right? So excuse me, just be mindful of that and pay attention to that. Okay, so let's move ahead here to Monday the 19th. And I think that's why they're trying to tell me why this is leading into this week, because we have Jupiter in square to the nodes. Okay, Jupiter in Gemini and square to the nodes, of course, the nodal axis representing where we've been in our trajectory forward. Okay, and Jupiter is in Mercury's sign of Gemini. So Mercury is ruling over this Jupiter, but Mercury is also ruling over the south node. So we've got a very mercurial aspect here in terms of maybe coming into our awareness and conversations, etc., maybe in terms of what we need to let go of in a practical sense, in a detail-oriented sense, as we move in a new direction. All right, and of course, this new direction in Pisces is the unknown. We don't know where the hell we're going. We're only seeing it as it comes. It's only being revealed to us as necessary. Okay, so we may see a certain bit path of the forward, we may see the breadcrumbs, but we're not seeing, or we may understand the destination where we want to go, but maybe we're not seeing fully how to get there or whatever, because that's Pisces, that's the fog, that's that kind of illusion. But we just have to have trust and faith and continue along that path as we continue to move forward there. We're letting go of what we thought was once practical, and we're moving in a new direction that is in a lot of ways veiled and unknown, but we also get to create that along the way too, right? Which is maybe partially why that veil is there, because Pisces rules that aspect of infinite creativity, spirituality, etc. Okay, so there's maybe this expansion of what I'm hearing too, of this push forward, of this release and letting go, of this push forward, that could of course relate to the communication awareness surrounding where we're healing in terms of our wounds, etc., setting boundaries, all of that kind of stuff as we come forward here. And of course, because since Mercury is kind of ruling the south node, and this Jupiter energy with Mercury and Taurus dealing a lot with our own value, worth, could deal a lot with money, monetary stuff, economic stuff, etc., through this time. Now, we're also going to have Mars here in sesqui-square to Saturn. Of course, Mars and Leo, this is kind of very much a masculine action-taking thing, but it's stuff that's, what I'm hearing is stuff that's being brought to light in terms of maybe taking action towards the Saturn energy. And like I said, that idea of saying no, that idea of these restrictions, but saying no to these restrictions and understanding that aspect of value, compassion, etc., that comes through this. This is very kind of related a lot between this Leo and Pisces energy, as Leo in a positive way expresses from the heart, and of course Pisces is a very strong, compassionate water sign. Okay, so, and with this sesqui-square, this is like a square and a half, so it's pushing for that resolution in some way to take action. It's something that cannot be swept under the rug any longer, and that's probably relating to these restrictions of that compassion, of that expression of self, of that expression of that positive masculine action-taking type of energy and standing up for what is right. And of course that ultimately begins with ourselves in a lot of ways too, right? And expressing that from the heart and standing up for that and really pushing for that resolution in that way. All right, just gonna double check here. Okay, we're still good. Sometimes I have technical difficulties, but we're okay. All right, so with this sesqui-square there, you know, like I said, pushing for resolution in that sense and maybe setting appropriate boundaries so that we get away of this restriction of that compassion, etc., and focus more on expressing from the heart and understanding from that place. All right. We also on this day have Mercury in this semi-square to Neptune in Aries. What I get again with this is that aspect of that compassion for that self, sovereignty, etc., and understanding our own value and worth through this awareness, through this communication of that awareness, etc., is what I get through that semi-square. And remember, we're dealing with the square type of aspect. So, and it's not bad. Not all squares are bad, but it's pushing for that resolution in some way to see our own value and worth and have compassion for that through our own identity, sovereignty, etc. Within that, through expanding that communication, awareness, and ultimately healing and moving forward in that way. All right, so that is Monday the 19th. Let's move on to Tuesday here, the 20th. Tuesday here, the 20th, we're going to have this last quarter moon here. Interestingly, at 29 degrees of Taurus and 29 degrees of Aquarius. And what I feel like this is that last-ditch effort surrounding looking at like this aspect of our own value, worth, sovereignty. And one thing that I'm getting here too is change, because we still have the sun here conjunct Uranus. There's an aspect of change, could be surrounding our own value, worth, etc. But there is this aspect of we're dealing with still with this fixed energy, and we're still in this, we're approaching the end now of this lunar month. This started with that new moon in Taurus, which was that grand fixed cross, fixed square. You can watch my previous videos on that. Which is almost like a crisis point. And now we're having like this last quarter square, which is at that anaretic degree, 29 degrees of both of these fixed energy signs, which is, I feel, is like really pushing for this aspect of change, but also as it relates to value and worth. And what I'm hearing is also money, monetary. This could be economically, etc. through this. Okay. And after this quarter moon that happens on this day is when we're going to have the sun then enters into Gemini. All right, so we're kind of at this last-ditch quarter moon effort, and then the energy shifts right away. And of course, prior to that as well, we have the sun here in what have I got? There we go. The sun here in sextile to Saturn. So again, remember, this is what I feel with this is that strong Taurus, that fixed energy, that like, I'm going to do what I want. I understand and I know my fucking worth. And in that sextile to Saturn, because we still got this conjunction here to Uranus, in that sextile to Saturn as well, that shattering of that restriction, control surrounding that aspect of, restriction of compassion, etc., and expanding that out more. What I feel with this is more of that expansion, right? But it's that Taurus energy with that. And it relates to that Saturn energy of like saying no, setting that boundary towards that restriction that Saturn has there. It's like with that Saturn energy and a sign, it's like you almost have to use the Saturn energy against itself in order to experience that growth. It's like Saturn's trying to teach you the hard lesson. It's doing those things to you, restricting to you, until you go back at it and say no, setting a boundary, whatever. And Saturn's like, good. You learned, right? That's that aspect of that expansion, that growth. And then Saturn's like, okay, you can grow and expand now because you've learned through what I was teaching you. You've learned through my restriction. You are learning to grow in that now, right? You are now understanding that. Okay. So that's kind of what that vibe is through that. And of course with Taurus, it's that very like stubborn, we got to do this kind of thing. But of course, this is surrounding not only our value and worth and our uniqueness, individuality, etc., but this is dealing with aspects of change. And these can be big changes that are kind of happening here, right? We've got Uranus at the end of Taurus here. And of course, is going to enter into Gemini later this year. And when that happens, those who have not yet learned to see the value in change are going to get a wake-up call. Because change is going to be happening exponentially with Uranus in Gemini, because Gemini is very quick. Okay, we're going to deal with a lot more air sign energy, this mutable energy, and also Uranus rules Aquarius, where we have Pluto, this aspect of transformation, change, etc. Aquarius is fixated on that aspect of change, and Aquarius is very quick too with that. Uranus energy is like a lightning strike. In Gemini, it's very quick. We're going to deal with things aren't going to be as slow as they are in Taurus here, but we may, through through that quickness, we actually may see more stability because we don't have this unstable energy of Uranus in Taurus either, right? We're going to have this shift into this, it's because people haven't been able to see the value in change, so they don't want to change. Whereas if they did and they understand value and worth and change and uniqueness, individuality, we wouldn't be in such an unstable state. Okay? But because people don't, and they're too stubborn and they stick with, they want to go back to this old stuff, which doesn't work, isn't working. And that's why our world is in fucking chaos right now, because nobody wants to actually fucking change. That once we get into this energy, it's like you're not going to have a choice anymore, and it's going to be happening. But that's what leads that. But because we're not in this space where it's like this heaviness of Taurus with the Uranus energy here, we might end up seeing actually more stability as Uranus leaves that sign, and then we beginning to see exponential progress in a lot of different ways, and maybe crazy wild communication and shit fucking happening out of nowhere, like insanely. And yeah, you think it's chaotic now? Well, anyway. But I mean, we'll see that when it comes, and I'll talk about that more as we arrive to that point. This is just kind of that preliminary energy, and you have to remember, in terms of these energetic cycles, it's how we use them. So once we get to that point, maybe what's going to come to me through that will end up even changing in some way in terms of how that energy is going to be used, in the beginning of that, and then as we go through it, because Uranus, spends a while in a sign, right? So there's that. All right, I think I've got that basically covered for Tuesday here. Let's move on to Wednesday the 21st. Of course, on this day, we're going to have Venus here in quintile to Pluto. So again, what I feel like is this is the transformation in terms of what I said of our honoring our individuality within relationships, our sovereignty, etc. And this almost feels like something that was happening behind the scenes now coming to the surface. Not only because of this quintile, but because Pluto is retrograde. So we're dealing with stuff that we've already gone over before, that has been worked on before, that we've kind of looked at, and now it's coming up to the surface again to be relooked at, reworked, etc. in terms of this transformation and this change that needs to occur in these areas of our lives surrounding Venus, value, worth, relationships, etc. But how we honor ourselves within that, respect ourselves, our individuality, our sovereignty, but also do the same with the other as well. All right? What I'm trying to get at is you don't have to be the same to be in a relationship. You don't have to do all those things. You just have to learn to honor each of your own unique individuality, right? It's like when people go on to date or whatever, it's like, well, we have nothing in common, or we have whatever. It's like if you just learn to respect each other for your uniquenesses, you might actually find that you can talk about certain things. You can talk about your differences and change and widen your perspectives on things. Doesn't mean you have to change who you are, but you might be intrigued by that person because they are different from you, and then that might end up being why you want to be with them or like them, right? Because they are different from you. The same can be boring, but different can be exciting. Okay, that's that kind of vibe, is respecting our unique individuality within ourselves, but also respecting that with the other as well. Right? And that's something that we very much need right now, because everyone is entrenched in so much division, saying, oh, we have to be this way, oh no, we have to this way, versus whatever. It's like, no. That's not how the universe works. That's not how any of this works. How the universe works is through fucking diversity, through understanding that you are a unique individual creation and that you have your unique individual place here. And that is to be respected, and that is to be honored, and that helps to expand other people's awareness. They don't have to change, but they have this awareness that, yeah, I'm this way, that person's that way, but they can help me with this, I can help them with that. It's interesting to talk to them about these things because I never would have ended up seeing this in a certain perspective if I didn't, right? So that's the uniqueness and that value and worth and that understanding of our identity or unique sovereignty within that, right? And we need to get out of this idea of victimhood or of this complete division and hating each other, etc. You might find that you actually get along more with people well if you just actually sit and have a fucking conversation with them instead of, hating on them from afar behind a keyboard or something. You might begin to understand where they're at and come to, maybe actually even come to an understanding between each other if you would just actually sit and talk instead of fucking screaming at each other or getting angry, right? So that's kind of that vibe with that. But of course, like I said, this is stuff that's maybe coming to the surface surrounding that transformation of this and the change that needs to occur here, right? So that is Wednesday the 21st. Let's move on to Thursday the 22nd. And oh my goodness, we've got a lot going on here. So to start off, we're going to have this Venus in trine to Mars. So again, we've kind of got like this fire, passionate energy. But what I feel is what I'm getting here is this is this expression. And I'm feeling like this is that masculine expression. Again, the masculine within all of us. Expression, because we're dealing with Leo, spotlight the expression of that from the heart. But in terms of our individuality within relationships, but also allowing the other, like I said, to do the same as well. And of course, this is a trine. This is positive. This is easy. This is flowing. It's almost like through all that we're kind of going through here, we're getting to this place of almost like this understanding to be able to become and express that more and more in that way. Okay? Excuse me. So pay attention to that, right? Also on this day, we're going to have Chiron here making minor aspects to the nodes. So there's this quincunx here to the south node, as in there's an integration of whatever this release is that is occurring regarding what we need to let go of in terms of what we once thought was practical. And with the semi-sextile here to the north node, this opportunity to move forward in this new direction. And what I'm hearing with that is maybe more compassion. In terms of, because we're dealing a lot with Chiron here in Aries in terms of healing, but this nitpicky Virgo energy, and also just once what we thought was practical that just isn't working anymore. It may be tough regarding this integration of letting go of that because we've been used to it for so long. We've been programmed or made to believe certain things, but now we're heading in a direction that is completely unknown to us. But regarding this aspect of compassion and more of this flowing vibe of like anything goes, you kind of just got to go with it. Like things are changeable. It's not this nitpicky Virgo and like this is how it is. It's we're moving into this new space in this kind of a way, and through that involves this aspect of healing through this integration and letting go and this opportunity to move forward in that new way that likely will feel, unknown to us in a lot of ways. Right? We also have the sun here that will be in sextile to Neptune. So the sun now in Gemini with this Neptunian Aries energy. This feels, how do I say this? There's like an expression here, like I said, with this awareness. With Gemini, I get like that aspect of expression, talking about the expression of that, but with this more compassion to this self, this identity. It's like this is becoming more and more expressed. I'm being drawn again to this Mars trine Venus and what I talked about regarding that in terms of that expression from the heart of our individuality within relationships. But now this can happen through more communication or conversation in this way regarding that more compassion towards ourself and our own identity in that way. It's like this aspect of softening to love that I talked about before with Neptune was coming into Aries. This softening to love of this Mars, this masculine energy and expressing from the heart and now through communication, etc. But as this relates to our own identity, but also through ourselves as well with that, right? So, and through the communication of that, through the awareness of that, etc. All right, we're also going to have Mercury here opposing Juno retrograde. So what I get with this is there's a communication surrounding value, worth. This could deal a lot with money stuff surrounding the transformation and the reworking of whatever these partnerships, contracts, business contracts, soul contracts, all that kind of stuff, etc., that needs to be reworked, transformed, looked at as this is as Juno is retrograde in Scorpio. And this could mean those things coming to an end as well, as Scorpio rules transformation, which also means, death. It could be an end of something, right? Through that. So through the transformations, partnerships, marriages, that kind of stuff, etc., regarding communication or talks surrounding maybe value, worth, money, that kind of stuff, etc., with that opposition there. that is coming through with that. All right, we've also got Venus here as well, and biquintile to Juno retrograde in Scorpio. So again, this is highlighted more with our relationships, but I've also, like I said, talked about with that representing that aspect of our uniqueness and individuality that exists within those relationships. All right. And also reflecting that of the other. So what I mean by that is honoring our own uniqueness, individuality within, regarding ourselves within the relationship, and of course as that relates to the other. And this could be behind the scenes work surrounding that, reworking these partnerships, contracts, etc. Through this, likely behind the scenes reworking that so that it fits in with our own individual perspective, and also balancing that out with the other's individual perspective as well within that. So this could feel like behind the scenes energy. This could also feel like stuff that has been happening behind the scenes that is now coming through in some way regarding the reworkings of these contracts, which also could mean an ending of those contracts. So it could mean, ending marriages, partnerships, business partnerships, or just a simple like reworking, transformation of those things as well as it relates to independence, sovereignty, etc. And as this relates to value and worth, this could deal from an economic perspective as well if you're looking on a global scale in that sense too. All right, so let's move on to Friday the 23rd here. So we're going to have this Mars energy. Oh, there we go. Mars energy in sesqui square to Neptune. So again, I'm still being drawn to that expression, that masculine expression of that aspect of softening to love, expressing from the heart in that way. Of course, with the sesqui square, it's so strongly pushing for resolution in that sense. So it's really pushing for that vibe, that expression of that unconditional love, that expression from the heart in that way, that softening to love of that masculine energy, not this harshness and etc. going on, but that softening to love with that, and that expression, new expression in that way. You can watch previous videos I did on regarding the Mars retrograde surrounding that. A lot of stuff that masculine energy was going through. I'm not going to reiterate that here. You can have a look at that if you want. But we've come into this place where we need to soften that expression to come into a place of love instead of the harshness that has maybe previously existed, right? Okay, we're also going to have on this day Mercury here in trine to the south node. Where are we? In trine to the south node, in sextile to the north node. So again, we've got a lot of these hits to the nodal axis this week, and with Mercury here, communication surrounding value, worth, money, things, that kind of stuff, etc., in terms of releasing what we once thought was practical and this opportunity to move in a new direction, albeit it being really unknown to us in a lot of ways, right? So there's that kind of that vibe coming through here. Interesting. I don't know, I'm being necessarily drawn to this Eros here, but there's this idea of maybe this desire, strong desire to maybe move in this new direction away and really let go of this kind of stuff. Desire for this compassion in this new direction, even though it is unknown, or to move into the unknown, to move into a new space, to create something that is new. And going forward here through this expression, there's this desire of this expression of this, new, I wanted to say monetary, but regarding value and worth and communication and talk surrounding that. Of course, I'm being drawn to the fact that Mercury still is in opposition to Juno there in Scorpio, so the reworkings of those contracts, commitments, etc., as we begin to let go of what we once thought was practical and to move into this new direction as well here. Of course, Mercury through this is in semi-sextile to Chiron, so it's healing these wounds of sovereignty, independence, identity, self, etc., as we begin to move forward through this energy as well. All right, so let's move on to Saturday the 24th here. And of course, I'm just going to bump the chart ahead a little bit. I want to see how we're going to... Oh, it's not going to... Let's just jump ahead to Sunday for a minute and I'll do it, where we're going to have this Saturn coming into Aries. Now, with Saturn coming into Aries, we're having now, and I talked about this before, we're having now Elder Gen Z, those who were born, like, let's say 96, 97, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know exactly the years, I haven't looked at that, but I believe 96 and 97 do have Saturn in Aries. Yeah, I don't know exactly when that ends, or exactly, and maybe later 97 doesn't, I'm not sure, but we're talking like elder Gen Z are now approaching 30, meaning they're beginning to have this Saturn return. Saturn in Aries, and especially with what I feel with this, is that needing to expand in terms of our independence, self-sovereignty, etc. So a lot of this stuff that I've already talked about with Venus retrograde, with all this Aries stuff and everything going on here surrounding these aspects of independence, self-worth, etc., I feel like that energy has had to happen now as we approach the Saturn in Aries. Because remember, Saturn teaches through restriction. We've needed to learn and understand that stuff about ourself, our independence within relationships, all of that stuff, because now there's this restriction here, but that's where we need to expand. That's where that growth occurs. That's where we need to grow, is in terms of our identity, our independence, our self, our sovereignty, etc. in that way. Saturn teaches through restriction, but that's where now we need to learn to set boundaries. What I'm hearing now is that aspect of boundaries and saying no to those that are not respecting our own independence, sovereignty, self, identity, etc., whatever that is. Okay? So through this, and especially where we're going to have Saturn conjunct Neptune, I feel like there's this aspect of that compassion for self in terms of being able to set those appropriate boundaries, and the dissolving of the restrictions that once held us back in terms of that expression. Now, that can happen on an individual level, that can happen on a higher level, whether it's an entity, an individual entity, whether it be like, I don't know, an organization, a business, a country, any of that kind of stuff that relates to, that can be like an individual entity, but also as it relates to individual entities, as in ourselves and our own individuality as well. All right, so that's what I feel with that, especially with Saturn coming into Aries there, conjuncting that Neptune. However, this again is still relating to that aspect of self, identity, sovereignty, etc. that does occur here. All right, so that's that initial ingress vibe of that Saturn in Aries. And again, with those who are experiencing their Saturn return right now, this is a hard lesson in terms of your life up to this point. It's like Saturn's like the boss, right? So your life up to this point, have you learned to set appropriate boundaries and honor your own self, identity, etc. for those that have Saturn in Aries, to honor that within yourself and to respect that within yourself? Have you learned to become into your own person, your own man, so to speak? Have you learned to become your own man, your own person, right? Have you learned to set appropriate boundaries towards other people in order to be yourself in that way? Because if you haven't, Saturn's about to kick you in the fucking ass and be like, guess what? You know what? I'm here for your performance review now to see if you have done these things. And if you haven't, the restriction is on for you to become aware that, hey, you know what? For now, this next 30-year cycle, you've got to do double time now. You've got to really look at this and make sure that you are taking the action for your growth. You wanted to come into this life to play the character that you're meant to play, which means that you chose to have this because that's where you wanted your growth to be, is in terms of your expression of yourself, your identity, your sovereignty, and expanding of that, and learning to set appropriate boundaries, learning to expand in that area of your life. That's where you wanted your growth to be. And so if you're not doing that yet, and that's what you chose to have, Saturn's coming back to say, hey, look at this, remember? You've got your performance review now. I'm the boss. I'm saying you chose this. This is what you wanted your goals to be. Well, this is where your growth needs to be. This is what you need to take care of now, right? So that is that vibe for that Saturn return. That is in general, okay? That is in general. Where this lands in your chart in terms of your house, what house it's in, what the house ruler is, what, like, all this, the aspects, all of that stuff, how that specifically relates to you is going to be unique to you. So what I said is a general vibe. However, how it specifically relates to you, again, like I said, is going to be unique to you. So don't just take what I said and be like, oh, that's what's going to happen to me. No. You want to know specifically how this is going to affect you and how you are using this energy, how your higher self is using that energy, etc. You need to get a personal reading, and you need to look at your own chart specifically on how that is going to affect you. Okay? There is no one-size-fits-all definition when it comes to astrology. All right? There just isn't. A lot of people will say that there is, there isn't. Okay? This is an energetic template. Yes, there's energetic themes. Yes, there's a lot of work done to learn to find out what all of this is in that sense as well. Right? But we're dealing with energetic cycles, mathematical cycles and calculations. Okay? The constellations are just there as like a pictorial reference. Right? That's not really what technically astrology is. There's 30-degree segments here that exist in this chart. Do you think each constellation is exactly 30 fucking degrees? No, it's not. We're dealing with math, we're dealing with the natural cycles and the physical fucking creation laws of the actual fucking universe here, people. We're not dealing with some picture in the fucking sky. That's a representation of it, a creative representation of it, but that's not exactly specifically what that is. There's energetic themes that relate to each 30-degree cycle here. And each sign is also split into decans too. So there's 3 decans per sign, which in terms of that sign's energy then gets split even more so. And you can relate to the degrees. Right? Each degree, what is it? The Sabian symbols that have different things for each degree, right? This is related to mathematical unique cycles that reflects to that which exists in our universe. Okay, that's what this is. All right? And it's how we use this energy that it comes into play. You manifested your being here. You wanted to play the character that you created in this life. In order to have that character created, you had to come in at a certain energetic time that was conducive to creating that character. And through that astrology chart, you were able to create you. It's how you use that energy in order to create you. How someone else would use a similar energy may be different in terms of what they wanted to create as well, because the universe is infinitely creative, but those energetic themes will still exist there, just albeit in a different way. That is how this works. There is no strict definition. Saturn in Aries is always going to be this. Mars in Leo is always going to be this. No. No. That doesn't come from me, that comes from them. Okay? That comes from them, not just from me. I am the messenger here. That is the message. Anyways. Also on this day, we have Mercury in where am I here? What? It's not even showing up in this chart. Because let me go back a day. There we go. Okay. Let me get back on track here. Also on this day, we have Mercury here in a, in a semi-sextile to Jupiter. All right. So again, there's this expansion of what I'm feeling like is this expansion of communication, of awareness surrounding value and worth. Okay. And with this Taurus energy, I feel like this is very stubborn Taurus energy, that expansion of value and worth. But again, as it relates to our self, identity, etc., because that's the vibe that is happening here, guys. That's the vibe that we're kind of going through right now. Okay, I don't really think I need to say too much more on that. And Mercury is still in opposition to Juno retrograde, so there's reworking of those contracts, etc. Right? We're also going to have here the Sun in trine to Pluto retrograde. So again, what I feel like is this quickening. All right, this quickening in terms of transformation and change. Okay? So, and in terms of where we know that we have needed to change, right? Pluto is retrograde, but there's still that transformational aspect in Aquarius of that change, of that shaking things up, change, destabilization, etc., that is occurring. But it's speeding up in these areas where Pluto has already been. So in what we know that has already needed to change, that was now, again, what is being like sped up here, this quickening of that transformation, of that change, etc. All right. We're also going to have Mercury come into conjunction to Uranus on this day as well. Right? So with that, there could be a change of mind. There could be communication that happens out of fucking nowhere. There could be, and with this semi-sextile to Jupiter, that could be like there's an expansion of that, of communication that maybe just comes out of nowhere. Stuff that's changing left, right, and center, right? Because Mercury rules Gemini, where we're having the Sun now in trine to Pluto in Aquarius. All right? And as this relates to that communication surrounding value, worth, money, awareness of that, etc., stuff could just be just kind of happening like that. All right, so that's kind of the vibe of that energy now as well. All right, bring it back to me here. All right, so that is all that I have for this week. I don't think I have anything else to say. If you have made it this far in the video, leave a purple heart in the comments so that I know you are a real one. And thank you all for watching. I hope to see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.